Hey folks, Steve here with another entry in my Dark Sands series. We are going to be beginning turn 2, and in this video that you're watching on YouTube, I hope to have also played through turn 3. We're going to try to increase the tempo here a little bit. I did want to point out one mistake that I made in the previous video. I realized it sort of in the post-recording reflection on how the game's going and what are the strategies I want to try to employ. And one of the things that I realized was that there were several units that had come in as reinforcements for the Italians. And I had set them up in Benghazi, but they're actually supposed to set up in, it's Derna, over here. Their counters actually say so, and so I went back and I looked at the activation order that happened, and basically after reinforcements there was one half move by the Axis, and so because they're so far out and it doesn't really matter in terms of it doesn't really matter so much in terms of the rest of the game, I went back and corrected. So I put them in it, I moved them to Derna, and then I did a half move. And essentially what I tried to do, I put one unit there outside Gazala to kind of protect, attempt to protect that area around, I can't get my camera to go, protect that area around Gazala to help protect the desert road. And then, to zoom out a little bit, I try to get this unit farther, but it doesn't have great movement speed. It's there to support Tobruk as we can get into it. I was also hoping maybe to just get down to one of these desert towns, but I didn't quite have enough speed to movement. And then the tank brigade, I did move up. This is as far as it could really get on a half move. We can't do an extended move on a half move, so this was as good as it could get. And my goal with the moves was to try to create at least some basic screen for the desert road, because what's going to happen is the British are probably going to go first, or they are going to go first, and they might do a move and attack, and they're going to move up, and they're probably going to cut these units over here out of supply, but I at least want to make it so they can't quite get all the way over here and cut everything off if they went flying through the desert, because there are desert roads here, trails with some towns, and they can actually get probably pretty far on a full move. And I want to at least make sure I can have a proper retreat and keep everything in order. So sometimes I'm looking at these movements and I'm thinking I'm making a mistake, but that's the correction we made, for better or for worse. We'll see how it works out, and we'll start to look at turn 2. So when we get back from the cut, I will have all the activation markers for this turn laid out like I did for turn 1, and talk a little bit about how the capabilities of the different factions are going to go. I believe that the advantage is going to be to the British, at least until the Germans show up next turn, but we'll see. Okay, okay. Okay, so here's the action chit lineup for turn 2. Obviously, we have the logistics chits here, and then the Commonwealth and Axis specific chits. Now, notice how here the first 2 chits I have are just move chits for the Axis. Those aren't choices. They will have to do movement if they draw those, while they have 2 half move plus crappy combat chits. So they can really only conduct combat if they draw one of the crappy combat chits, and if they conduct any combat, it's going to be at a -1 modifier. Again, speaking to my worried nature of the script here, in terms of how the game should go, clearly turn 2 is telling the Axis player that you need to retreat. Now, the force composition on the board is probably such that we would want to do that anyway, and maybe the chits allow us to do it, but it's not like I have even the option to really do a true counterattack here. Everything's telling me to retreat, basically. At least that's the way it seems to me. Now, maybe I could use these full moves as the Axis to try to outflank the British, but unfortunately, we just don't. I don't think we really have the units to do so, but maybe we'll see. And by comparison, the Allies have a pretty good setup here, all things considered. So the one thing they get that they didn't get last turn is a reinforcement chit. The Axis don't get one this turn because they don't have any reinforcements on turn 2, but the Allies do. So they're going to get some new units on the board when that comes up. They have the O'Connor chit that we had before that allows them to do movement and combat in an activation, which is very powerful. We have a combined move and movement or combat chit, so they get a full move or good combat, and then 2 of the less good choice ones, so half move or crappy combat. And there's a new chit here, which is the Comforce. I don't know how to pronounce that, and I haven't read enough on the North African campaign or have heard it. Well, I guess I've done some reading, but I've not heard someone pronounce that before, so I don't know how it's supposed to be pronounced. But that's a special chit that, when drawn, it's actually very similar to the O'Connor chit. The difference is the O'Connor chit allows you to activate all of your units as the Allies. This Comforce chit allows you to activate 1 unit. And that's kind of interesting. So it when you figure, when it comes to combat and you're doing odds calculation, if you're only activating 1 unit to attack, that means it's going to be a one-on-one fight, which means the odds are going to be bad. So I think this chit will be ultimately very circumstantial in how useful it will be. If it comes up at a really good opportune time, we might be able to pick maybe one of the Allied tank or motorized units and spring forward and cut off some supply lines maybe before a logistics chit comes up. But if, say, it comes up after both logistics chits have come up, we may end up only using it to shuffle a few units around, or rather shuffle 1 unit around just to get better positioning. So it's useful in that it can do movement and combat, but the fact that it's activating a single unit reduces the combat effectiveness of it. But hey, if you look at how many chits there are here, that's 5 chits to 4. I mean, it's just an extra activation for the Allies. So looks good from their perspective, certainly. Okay, so we'll look at putting these chits in the cup and get ready to go. The Allies are going to have initiative on this turn because their symbol is on the turn track, and we didn't have a case where a single side had the last 2 activations, so it just goes to the turn track determiner, which is the Allies. They will pick one of these chits to be their initiative chit, and then we'll go from there. So I'm going to spend some time figuring out what I want to do. I could use the O'Connor chit, but it might be better to have the O'Connor chit come up later in the turn to really put a hammer down, and instead use maybe like a movement chit to just bring all our guys up and start cutting off some supply lines without the need even for combat. That might be really useful for us to do. So we'll take a look at it. Okay, one thing I wanted to pop in here very quickly and just point out, I did a little bit of Googling about the Comforce. I guess I had forgotten that Comforce is named for the officer that commanded it, and I believe his last name is pronounced Combe, sort of like a comb that you would use on your hair, maybe? Maybe one way to remember how to pronounce it. So it's the Comforce, I think, is how it's supposed to be pronounced. So I apologize for sounding like a total neophyte when it comes to the North African campaign. It's not an area that I'm super knowledgeable in, so apologies for that. So I'll try to pronounce it correctly going forward. One thing I'm also going to point out before I get started is that if we were following the true sequence of play here, there is a replacement phase before the action phase where we figure out initiative and start doing the action chits, but there is not much... sorry, I had to make a quick cut. There's not much with the actual replacement phase this time because we don't actually get the replacement chits that we would use, which are over here right now. We wouldn't start using those until the May-June time frame of 1941. That's going to be turn 4, and that's why you see on the replacement track right there, The first thing that you see is the number 4 saying turn 4. What chit did you draw for turn 4? And so until turn 4, we're not going to have any replacements. Now, that's all well and good for the Italians because everything they've lost so far has been, irreplaceable. You can't replace the units that they've lost. But for the Allies, they did take a couple of step losses, and so that just may be a concern here for them that they're not going to get reinforcements for a little while. So we're going to, we would do the replacement phase here. There's nothing really to do, and we'll move into the action phase. Okay, so I've gone ahead and decided that the Allies are going to use their movement marker, their full movement marker, as their initiative chit. I don't want to use O'Connor yet. I want that to come as a follow-up, and in order to do that, what I'd like to be able to do is move and then conduct combat later when we could get into a better position. We couldn't get, if we used O'Connor, we couldn't move and attack to the best value, so I want to wait till later. So what I did was I swung the Allies up through here. I put some of the motorized units up here against the Italian tanks. If we had gone out further west, what could happen is that that tank unit could have come down and cut the desert road and cut off their supply. And so I'm going to send them up there with the expectation that if we can get another activation, we can at least keep that unit pinned there and then send one of the motorized units out west and then up to cut off some potential rail lines. Sort of same thing here. I just put a couple of units to make sure that unit couldn't disrupt the move, and then I brought up all the other forces along this line here. And again, because we're not attacking, I'm just trying to get them in a better position so that when the Allies move again, they can then truly cut off supply lines and conduct combat to annihilate some units. So that's the plan, and now all the other chits are going to go into the cup, and we'll start drawing. Now, it could come out that the Axis will get activations, and they could very well try to get themselves out of this situation, but it's really going to depend on what comes up here. If we do get that home force chit, and we can get one of our motorized units to swing out around, this might be the time where that's the most valuable, but we'll see what we get here. So first chit drawn at random is indeed a Axis full move. So now each side has had their first movement, and I'll be back after the Italians have made their move. Okay, so with the Axis move, what we just tried to do is we pulled back a little bit. We didn't do a full-scale retreat. I pulled the unit back from Solemn to Bardia. I think the escarpments there helps protect it a little bit, but I do think that unit's kind of screwed. I maybe should have kept them moving back. What it does is it does force the Allies to at least hold some units back so they can't progress. Everything else, I doubled up a unit here, left the guys in the back where they are just to hold Tobruk a little bit better. Not much the Italians can really do but hold on. And what's interesting is that I am reminded a lot of some of Ted's other games that use a chit pull system. So I did a review of Reds, the Russian Civil War by Ted Racier, and that's a chit pull game as well. And a lot of that comes down to what you're trying to decide to do is really in relation to that logistics chit. So I feel it's very similar here where I'm really questioning, well, when is that logistics chit going to come up? If it's going to come up quickly and the Italians are in supply and we draw both of them, then there's less of a concern here. But otherwise, if the British manage to get good timing, that's what's going to throw everything off. So I'm not sure yet, not quite sure what's going to happen yet, but I suspect that we're going to have some out-of-supply Italian units at this point. I may have made some mistakes here. I also thought about trying to bring that tank around down here to cut off the supply, but because you can count 8 hexes, I'm pretty sure those units could very easily count those hexes, unless I could get completely around them, but I don't think there's enough movement there to do it. Yeah, so I think we'll have to look at it some more. Okay, I just want to illustrate something in the way that these trails and roads work, because you have to keep in mind that unless it's a victory space, you don't hold permanent control of a hex. So these towns out in the desert, as soon as you leave them, it's not like you have a control marker and you have to spend any extra effort to make use of them. And so, just to show, if I were to take this unit and manage to get over here and say, okay, well, now my zone of control is cutting off this trail, these units are going to be out of supply, right? Well, no, they won't be out of supply, because they could trace, they're on a trail that can lead down and around and back down this way, and the zone of control here doesn't cut that off. So we just don't have the power, the force power right now to cut off the British, because they can take different routes. They may be long routes around the way to do it, and so the best thing that Italian tank can do is to continue to screen the desert road. So just, we don't have enough force to make really great decisions. We have to just kind of fan out and try to establish some sort of locking Zocs to hold the line. Later in the game, I believe there'll be enough forces on the map that will have true front lines. Here, it's just maneuvering around, chasing after each other in the desert. So, the next chit drawn is a logistics chit. And if I'm looking at everything correctly, this is the first logistics chit. Everybody is in supply or has a line of supply. Nobody's had any instances where they've been cut off yet this turn, so that's an easy one. Easy logistics. Now, the Italians will be very lucky if they manage to pull, if we pull the logistics chit again, the second one, or if the second one comes soon. That's going to be good for the Italians. It means that they're going to be out of danger in terms of just automatically losing units to attrition, and they could even maybe entertain ideas of a better setup, and it will force the Allies then actually attack the units on the board if they want to get rid of them. Something that I'm thinking about as we go is that there are different ways to accrue the victory points. So the Allies need to hold Benghazi to get a victory point per turn. The Germans need to be holding spaces on the eastern map to get victory points. And so there's a little bit of, in terms of who's going to be the winner of the game, if you manage to hold these critical areas for some amount of time, you're sort of getting ahead of the game, being a winner for your temporal achievements. So, even if the Allies took Benghazi for a couple turns but then lost it and got pushed back, the fact that they got that far will accrue some victory points that will count at the end of the game. And then at the very end of the game, after the last turn, there's a few spots around the center of the map that provide victory points. And that's to say, when the scenario ends, this game ends, where were the front lines at? How successful were the Axis and the Allies in terms of fighting operationally in the region? And so some of this is like, well, if I defeat units here, is that enough? How valuable is that really to me? Where what I really would like to be doing is outflanking them and getting to these victory point spaces and holding them if I can, and securing my supply lines. So the longer the Italians, even if they're losing these units, if they can keep the British out of Benghazi, that's good. And then as the Germans come on, obviously they'll be pushing for Alexandria and El Alamein, but that delaying action will keep things even. And if we get towards the end of the game and neither of the sides have done well enough to capture one of these temporal VP spaces, then it really is just going to come down to, well, where is the game at its final point on this tug of war across these three maps, and that will determine the winner. So something I'm going to be trying to think about as I go here, and where can we get into the areas to eliminate units and get those victory points. So we're going to draw the next chit here. Next chit is the O'Connor chit. So this is the big action that the Allies are going to get. This is pretty important. We ignore this for movement and attack limit, so this is our big freebie. And I think this will be, yeah, this will be a pretty important one. I'll have to think about, this maybe came too soon. We might have wanted this to come after we got another move in to position our units better. So I'll have to think on this, and we'll be back. Okay, so with the O'Connor chit, I've gone ahead and done the moves for the Allies, and I'm taking on a little bit of risk here. And it really depends on how you read the port supply rules. So the Axis can get, at least according to the rule book, port supply, only Tobruk can provide port supply to the Axis. Axis units in Tobruk and its adjacent forts can trace line of supply to the port of Tobruk for the attrition segment of the end phase. And there must be at least one Axis unit on the center map that can trace a line of supply to El Agela. So if reading that is right, then you're only tracing supply for the attrition segment at the end of the turn. So being able to trace supply to Tobruk doesn't actually help you in a logistics chit, I guess, if I'm reading that right. And I guess if I double check the errata, yeah, it doesn't point to any other clarification. So Tobruk actually isn't really great for port supply for the Axis unless you just want to avoid complete surrender. They can be put out of supply, but they won't surrender if they can get to Tobruk. So what I've done here, I've taken a little bit of a risk. I've moved my forces, one up to Bardia, and maybe we'll attack and try to take Bardia outright. There is a fort there, but only provides one defensive factor. I've moved some units up to here to continue to screen that unit, and moved some units up to screen that unit, while the units that were there flung westward and are seeking to attack here. And it's critical because the Desert Road right there is a critical hex. It wraps around that inlet of the Mediterranean. If the British can take that, that's going to deprive a line of supply back to El Agela, which then nullifies the port supply rule. So this is a very critical spot. If we can take it and the logistics chit comes up, then the Italians are going to be in really rough shape, because that puts everything else on the map out of supply. However, if things go differently, the Italians may be able to cut through here maybe and try to deprive those units of supply, but I think counting the 8 hexes back to a trail, I just don't know if the Italians have enough movement to get over there. And by the way, the reason why they could even get to that point is because the ridge line right here stops the zone of control of that Italian tank brigade, which meant the units could move sort of laterally west directly without worrying about the Zoc being projected by the Italians. So they simply left the Zoc hex they were in and were able to proceed west all the way through. Now we could have maybe tried to cut up through here, but that would have left Tobruk in these areas in supply. So we're making the hard strike left. And again, I'm just trying to get some units westward along the desert roads just to make sure we could protect it down the line. And keep things relatively safe. There's still a chance that the Italians could cut off those forward units. It's just going to depend on how the chits come out. So we'll see. So I'm going to take a bit of time. I'm going to work out what combats we want to do, and we'll go from there. Okay, so in terms of combats, I think I've worked out that we are indeed going to attack up here, and then we're also going to attack Bardia. The other attacks that are possible over here simply don't have good enough odds, but they're just there mostly to keep the Italians from heading into the desert to cut off our tenuous supply lines here. So I think that's all that makes sense. Now, over here on the right combat, the Italian unit there has a defense factor of 3. It's in the fort hex, the red outline, so that's a +1 defensive factor. And then in rough terrain, that is actually going to give another defensive factor. So there's going to be 5 defensive factors in the hex. Attacking, we have the 6 here, and then we have 6 here, but they are attacking, even though there's a road here, we have to use the other terrain for combat effectiveness, and because we're attacking into, we're attacking across this ridge, I believe that is just a ridge. Yeah, it's not an escarpment, it's a ridge through here. Even with the road, that's a -1 attack factor per attacker. So this 6, each 3 goes down to a 2. It's actually 4. So we have 10 to 5. That is only a 2-to-1 odds ratio, which isn't great. It could be bad. However, most of the results on the die roll would be good for us. I think what we'll do, none of the assets that we have would actually provide any better odds. We would need to get up to 15. And I guess if we added every single asset we wanted to this combat, we could get to 3-to-1 odds. But we need some of these assets for other combats. So we're going to do this unassisted, and we're just going to rely on the die roll. So here comes the die roll. I only rolled a 2. A 2 is a BL1, so both attacker and defender lose 1 step. Well, this is the only step for the Italian unit, so it's permanently eliminated. And we'll take a loss, and we have to take it from the tank unit first. But we do get to advance after combat, and we will do that with some of these units here. I guess we can do it with all the units because there's nothing stopping us, and the stacking is okay. So now we've taken Bardia, and we lost a step, and that's not great from the tanks. But now we don't even need to worry about taking those units out of supply. We simply eliminated the Italian units. And Bardia is a port that the Allies can make use of for port supply, so just overall that was good. We were able to take that. And now for the big combat, that was really important, I guess, not big in terms of size. So the defending unit here has a defense factor of 3. We're attacking with 7, and so we will add our naval to the combat, which will then make that a 9, so that becomes 3-to-1. And I guess if we added both Air Force units, I'm not sure if we're limited, if we can use both or not. More than one air asset may be used for combat, so we can add both. And that would actually make it a 12-to-3, would be 4-to-1 odds. And that is better, but it will use up the rest of our support. But I think this is pretty critical. We're really gonna put the hurting on, so I think it's worth doing. We're gonna throw everything into this combat. Very important to take that hex and cut the supply line. I think the only challenge then, well, it won't fully cut the supply line. I just realized that the desert roads to the south are still going to be open for supply. So this actually isn't, it's not as good. It's not as good right now anyway. We're going to need to we're going to need another movement actually to get what we need. I need to think through that here for a second. I guess the other thing we would have done would be to sit on the desert road and have one less unit. We would have moved, I guess. So if I'm realizing this, so it would be So that would be 9-to-3, and this unit would have been able to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to zoom out so you can see what I'm doing here. So instead of moving both of these units over here, we instead moved it down here, and that blocks the desert road. So if we're able to eliminate that unit, so I'm changing my move order before we do the combat. Technically, I shouldn't do this, and my opponent would have to be very gracious to allow me to fix this error. But I just totally forgot that the Italians could be tracing supply along the desert trails. I need to place this unit here so that the Italian paths via the desert road can't come off this and then go through Libya to get supply. So that I need to plant a unit there to block that road. So now it is just a 3-to-1, and if I don't do particularly well, I could actually see this lone unit get screwed up. So this is truly a big risk. This is a big risk, definitely a big risk. So we'll see if it pays off. So 3-to-1 odds. We ideally want a 5 or a 6 here, and we didn't. So we got both lose a step. So this is actually not terribly good. So this unit is, by gosh, it's even got a second step. Uh-oh. Both lose a step, and that's it. Okay, so this didn't go well at all. This did not go well at all. Now, had I kept the 4-to-1 odds, that would have been... yeah, well, even if I had 4-to-1 odds, I still rolled a 2. All attacking defending units are reduced by 1 step, so it still wouldn't have cleared that unit. I just didn't roll well, and now the Commonwealth have a problem. This isn't good for them at all, actually, and depending on how the chits now draw out, there could be some severe punishment for the British. It's just going to depend on what happens and what we decide to do here. So, interesting stuff. I'm going to go ahead and just draw the next chit so we can see what the next result will be, and then I'll be thinking on it. So next chit is an Axis half move or crappy combat. So we'll look at that and we'll be back. Okay, so with the next chit being a half move for the Axis or a bad attack, I think that the challenge for the Axis right now is that they still have a good move left in the cup, but if they take this half move, they won't be able to make use of it. Right now, if the Commonwealth were to attack again, it might be worth doing this as an attack for the Axis and then not actually attack. I mean, if we attacked here, for instance, as the Axis, it would be 5 defense, 5, it'd be 1-to-1. They could do some step losses and could even possibly, if we rolled well enough, could actually take out some of these British units. And that might be worthwhile doing. We'd only be able to do a 1 loss step. But if we drew another combat and then a move, we could cut off a lot of British units and jump into the line here. That could be potentially useful. They wouldn't be able to cut off all the units, but that would certainly just cause a problem. The full move, if we could draw it, would definitely be better. That would definitely be better, and it's in there. But the problem is that there's a whole mess of British tokens in there as well. So there's not much more that we can do, I don't think. So I think that, yeah, this needs to be taken as a combat, and we just need to do what we can. I think some of these Italian units are going to be screwed no matter what. So we'll take it as a combat. And we will attack down here. It's just a 1-to-1. and that's all that there is. I don't think there's any other attacks that make any other sort of sense, but I think now would be just a good time. Might as well, you know, the Italians are there, so we'll roll the die. It's a 5 because I rolled a 6, but a -1 because it is a crappy combat modifier chit that we used. And that's the best we could have got, honestly, and it's just a BL1, so both sides lose a step, and this British tank unit, I think, has to be lost first, which now the first rebuildable unit goes on the track, and then this Italian unit's lost forever. But now, at least they got rid of some of the British Commonwealth units. I mean, I think that's... I don't know. I guess the Italians will take it. I mean, that's as good as it can get. I don't think any other attack makes sense to do. We're just barely hanging on, so that's all we can do, really. We'll draw the next chit. Now, if it were a Italian move, that would be great. The Italian move marker, but we'll see. And it is the Comb Force chit. So one unit gets to move and attack. And gosh, I have to wonder what's even a good move here. Move and attack. Well, I think what we'll just do, this seems like the easiest thing, is just to move this unit up so it can better hone in on the English unit. So he's kind of out here in the desert, not being super useful. We'll do that. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We'll just do that, and that will make it harder for the Italians to do anything. Alright, we'll pull the next chit, and it is a logistics. Okay, so now the Italians don't have to worry about supply for basically the rest of the turn. They're good to go. So this logistics chit is done. Nothing's out of supply at this point. Now we're just going to keep on moving. We can keep on moving. The game's getting a little faster now. And now we have British reinforcements. Now, there are some withdrawals that are going to happen here for the turn 2 reinforcements, and I think some other units come in their place. So I'm going to stop recording here. I need to review the exchange, withdrawal, and new unit rules, and clip some counters while I'm at it. So we'll be back. Okay, so with the reinforcements, we actually have some special cases here. So for turn 2, we have some exchanges that will occur. So 3 units boxed in red right there are going to be withdrawn, and they will be replaced by the 3 units with sort of the purple NATO symbol. And they can be exchanged on a 1-to-1 basis as long as they can trace a line of communication, and I'm pretty sure all of them can. So I believe they will get to come in, and this may even help one of our reduced units because it's going to be replaced by a full-strength unit. And then we have 3 units on there, the top row in turn 2, that are just going to come onto the map, and I have them, you know, punched and cornered right there, and I think I will go through and do this. But just to keep in mind, much like we had reinforcements come in for the Italians, they're going to go into a specific place, but they're not set to a specific hex like those Italian special reinforcements were. Instead, we have to use the actual placement rules, which means they're either going to end up adjacent to an allied supply source, or we can put a couple of units in Mersa Matra and Tobruk if we control them, and we control the first port, but we don't have Tobruk yet, so we're not going to be able to reinforce there. We could also put units on HQs if they were here, but we don't, so we'll have to do that. But those exchange units will be very important because it just means that those will come in, and they will come in already at the front line, just replacing particular units. So I'm going to take a second, and now that I've explained that, I'm just going to do that on the map, and we'll show it. Okay, so I've gone ahead and done the exchange here, and you know, you're not going to really be able to tell in the sea of stuff, but the Indian units that we withdrew will actually come back in later turns. So I set them up later in the reinforcement track is when they'll come back. And then in terms of the new unit placement, I put the two of the slower moving units with 5 movement speed here in Masamatra, and then the Indian motorized unit I put in Alexandria, because that's the only other place I could really put him right now. He's got better movement, a movement of 6, so he could get to the front more quickly. I think what we'll end up doing, though, is because we do control Bardia, which is a port that the Allies, I believe, can use for supply, and I think naval movement. On the next move, we might try to just simply move those units via a port move, naval move, and bring them to the front that way, because it's going to take them a while to get all the way up to where our front lines are. Otherwise, then, these units that had come up, the Australian units that replaced the Indian units, well, 2 of them ended up there in Bardia, and the other one replaced the reduced unit here, so this is actually sort of a net benefit, even though we're exchanging units that are, we were exchanging units that were pretty close to being the same strength all around. I believe that unit could come in full strength, not reduced like the Indian unit that it's replacing or exchanging with. So that's sort of a net benefit to the Commonwealth. It seems like they get a full strength unit there instead of a half strength. Overall, just much better for the Commonwealth there. And so I think that's it for the reinforcements. That's been done and accomplished. So we'll look to now do the next chit pool, and we'll see what we get. It is the British half move crappy combat. And if I look at our chart currently, we've had 1 move followed by a couple of specials. So we could do I guess we could do a move, or we could do, a crappy move, or we could do a crappy combat. And we've still got, this is actually the first regular combat chit, so it wouldn't hurt to use it here, and then that gives us an opportunity to do another one, but we don't have the best setup right now, so we'll have to see about that. A half move might be better. We'll have to see. So I'm going to take us off recording, and I will think through what we want to do. Okay, so I decided to use that as the last move for the British for a couple of reasons. So I resituated our units a little bit, and I think it's just going to be better that way. To kind of clean up what's going on. So I moved these forces up from here, or from Bardia, and I moved the 1 unit back over and up, or back and up, to kind of reset some of the Zocs. And so that unit there, that Italian unit's completely surrounded and has Zocs blocking it everywhere, and so I'm reasonably certain when the next logistics, well, I guess the logistics check won't matter because it'll be in supply, but if we can do a combat later, because we still have all of our combats, we ought to be able to whack our way through. I did move this unit up because it's safe to do so, and project some zone of control that ties down the Italians there. And then on the far right, what I did is I swapped these 2 units out. I moved one to where the other one was, and I put the full strength unit up so that it can attack that reduced Italian unit on the next combat, and then that will close up supply for all of those units. So it was an adjustment I decided to make, knowing that we still got combats to come in the cup, and this will set us up for the best combats that could occur here. We've also trapped an Italian unit. Also, our new reinforcements that had come on the board, they're going to start moving towards the front. I'm not sure. I'm reasonably certain that I couldn't have done a naval move with a half move marker. I need to double check that. During any one action segment per game turn that allows movement, the active player may move units from port to port. Oh, okay. Well, it does look like they actually can, even with a half move, do naval movement. So I'm gonna stop recording a second. And I'm gonna do some naval movement, I think, instead. Okay, so yeah, I just did the naval movement. I moved all 3 units. The 2 that were in the Mursa space and Alexandria, both of which are ports. And the Allies can move up to 3 units. Let's double check. Yeah, maximum of 3 eligible Allied units may move by sea per game turn from friendly port to friendly port, provided the port, blah, blah, blah. So it's the only naval move we can make of the turn, I guess, because we're doing 3, but we can do it all with this half move, apparently. The rules don't say anything about not doing that. Checking the errata, I don't see anything around restriction of that, and so we simply moved all of our newly placed units here to Bardia. They traveled by sea, and now they're much closer to the front, so it's all good. We're working our way through here. I don't see us being in very much danger of anything at the moment, so goodness for the Commonwealth, and we're going to finally draw the next chit, and that will be the Commonwealth chit. And I think because we've done, let's see, normal move, special, normal move, this will have to be a combat. And if I look, oh, actually no, we can't. The last 2 chits were British, so we have to draw a Axis chit instead. And well, the only Axis chits left are the crappy move in combat or a move, and we got the crappy move or combat. We can use either or as the can do either or as the Italians. I'm not sure what the best thing to do here is. Probably a half move. I think that's probably the best thing. We could try combat, but I don't think. Yeah, I think we have to move. That's our only real option here, is to do the half move. So that's what we're gonna do. Now the options are pretty straightforward. I think we want this unit to go 1, 2 here, and I think we want this one. We set him here. And he's not going to be able to move because he's locked in Zox. I think that's all we're going to be able to really do for that. Unfortunately, not a lot of options, but we need to defend. You know, even if we try to pull back more, I mean, I don't know where they can go to pull off 2 that really makes sense. Okay, and we draw our next chit, and it is the Axis move marker, so we can do more movement. Oh wait, no, we can't. This would be our 3rd Axis move. So I mean, it comes out of the box, but we don't get to use it for movement. We can't use it for anything else either. So that's it. So the last chit comes out, and it is the British move or attack. I think this one, some movement makes sense to do here. I mean, combat would be good. We could use combat and then just. Yeah, I think that's what we'll do. We'll do combat, and we'll at least get rid of the 1 Italian unit there. I don't think the Commonwealth has done very good these last couple of turns. We don't have what we really need. We can't even really take Tobruk right now. But this was our only option because we couldn't move anymore as the British. We have to do it as a combat, and so that's what we'll do. And the only combat that we'll do, because this up here just wouldn't work at all, is this combat. And we have 1, 4, 7, 10 to 3. That's 3 to 1. 3 to 1, and we don't have any assets that we can throw in. And so we'll just We'll just roll it. We rolled a 6. That's as good as it gets. So 3 to 1. 6 is an exchange result. Defender eliminated. Attacker loses equal number of steps. Well, this is a single step unit, so we need to lose a step. And unfortunately, we might be forced to take... ooh. I think we have to take it from the armor unit, unfortunately, and that's the last step for it. Because that's the first priority is a tank unit. So I guess we lose yet another tank unit, and we'll advance after combat, like so. But gosh, that's not maybe the best thing that could have happened. But I don't know. Yeah, I think we had from a non-replaceable unit, then from an armor unit, then from a full-strength 2-step unit. So a full-strength infantry won't take hits as long as there's a tank unit in the combat to take a hit. So, yay, we eliminated more Italians, but we didn't get really where we wanted to be. And now we're at the end of turn 2. So attrition segment, the Italians have managed to keep a hold of supply, so nothing there. That's all good. All the Commonwealth is good. The victory check segment, so victory check, I don't think anyone gets any victory points here. Double checking. Don't got Benghazi, nothing else. Okay, that's simple. Building segment, we'll roll the die. We rolled a 2, so the railhead does not move at all. So not great for the British there. No Tobruk bypass road. Anyone's disrupted? No. Asset availability, so all of our assets get reset. You know, I just realized I didn't leave any garrisons behind as the British, but so far I haven't seen a reason to need one, I guess. Maybe if I should have dropped some off in some of these desert towns, but... Well, we'll see what happens because of that. And now we will move on to turn 3, so I'm going to take us off. Okay, so we're looking at the beginning of turn 3. Like turn 2, we won't have any replacement phases, but this is going to actually be a pretty critical turn. I've realized, in terms of the large-scale strategy of the game, that the Allies not getting Tobruk is actually a bummer. Capturing Tobruk actually allows you to put in a extra action chit into the cup for Tobruk Falls. Because the Allies failed to get that, they didn't get some maybe extra activations in the past couple of turns. They may still be able to take it, but this is actually going to be a pretty big turn for the Axis, and that's for a couple of reasons. First, this is the first turn on the turn track where the Axis gets the initiative by default if the action chits didn't come out to be overwhelming for the last couple of chit draws. So again, if one side had the last 2 chit draws, the other side gets initiative. Well, it was, you know, one and then the other. So we look to the turn track to see who gets initiative. It is the Axis. Now, on top of that, this is also the turn that the Germans get involved, and we start to see a change in the way that the tempo of the game is going to be going. And you can see that this is also reflected in the action chit schedule. Another thing, you know, just piling on to the I fear the game will be steered too much by this. Now, I say that, of course, and I'm way behind as the Allies, and pretty much everything else I've read in the example of play, and I've read, you know, some of the blog entries on the Inside GMT blog of AAR session reports of this being played. Seems like all the Allies are always past Tobruk at this point. Maybe I've just played very poor Allies, or maybe the die rolls have just not gone very well, or I've played very good as the Italians. I'm not sure. I'll be self-congratulatory there, maybe. But on turn 3, the action chit schedule is actually very much against the Allies. They only get their reinforcement chit, 2 move chits, and those are move-only chits. They're not move or combat, so a big change from what the Allies have been used to. And then they get 2 crappy either-ors, so the only combats they're going to get this turn if they even take them, are going to be negative modifier ones. So this means that if the Allies were going to try to take Tobruk before the Germans could get in place, they're not going to be in a very good position to do that. They might get one good opportunity to take it, and they're going to have to throw all of their assets to do so. So I think this could be a very big deal that the Commonwealth didn't capture Tobruk by turn 3, because they just don't have the ability to take it this turn, I suspect. Now, by comparison, the Germans and the Axis have a lot more going on for them. They have the reinforcement chit that's going to bring on more Italians and will bring on the Germans. We'll also see the Rommel special chit come up. So this is one that can be used to interrupt the normal sequence of play. It's a priority chit. And would allow one non-out-of-supply German divisional formation, stacked together or not, or any German units in any one hex to move and attack or attack and move. On game turns where the Axis have the initiative based on the turn track, this chit allows 2 non-out-of-supply German divisional formations or any German units stacked in any 2 hexes to move and attack or attack and move. So this is a very powerful chit. Even more powerful, really, than the O'Connor chit that the Allies had the last couple of turns. And what's funny is that they don't get the O'Connor chit anymore for the rest of the game. So the O'Connor chit and the Comb Force are done, and now we have the Rommel. We also have the Africa Corps chit, which it's a special chit that's a bit like the O'Connor chit. It doesn't count against consecutive action chit limits. Does not count, or it does count against the 2 consecutive chits, but does not count for 2 move and 2 combats, which is an extra one, and allows all non-out-of-supply units of the 15th and 21st Panzer Division and any 1 Italian divisional formation in range of the Africa Corps HQ to move and attack. The Africa Corps HQ must be in supply, basically. So this is actually the first chit that will come in that is going to deal with HQ units. So once the HQ units are on the map via reinforcements, we'll get in the mechanics of HQs, which basically just means, where you put those HQs will be important. Up to this point, units have just been moving around and attacking without HQs, no big deal. But the HQ units will be a factor when it comes to things like artillery striking and things like the chit we just talked about, where you need to have units kind of in range to really leverage them. We also get the 21st Corps Italian chit, and it's also a special chit. Allows any 2 Italian formations in range of the HQ, attached HQ, the 21st Corps HQ, to move and attack. Allows all other Italian units to move 1 hex if permitted by the terrain chart or perform extended movement. So again, we just have a series of really powerful chits, and then on top of that, we have 2 move or combat chits, full powered moves and full power combats. And on top of that, we have 2 of the crappy either or chits. So when you look at it, this is going to be a huge turn for the Axis probably. If we can get the units at least in range of the enemy, where they have a lot of flexibility now. They actually get the either or move and full combat ability chits. They'd ideally like their 2 moves to probably be full moves, and then maybe they could do some combat. But these other powerful chits are going to be a big deal in allowing them to get in. So it's going to be very powerful, and we could see the Axis really turn the tide of the war here and be smashing the Commonwealth and be surging forward. Overall, in the game, the Germans seem to get less reinforcements than the Allies, so whatever we get, we'll have to really make use of on their side. But the tricky thing is, I should look, we have to see if the Germans with initiative can pick reinforcements for initiative, because they're probably going to want to pick that so that they can get the units on the board and then surge them forward with all the other chits to beat back the Allies. So we'll look at that, and we'll be back. Okay, so as it happens, when it comes to reinforcements, there's actually a special rule for turn 3. Go figure. So there's a special turn 3 reinforcement segment, which means that we don't actually even use the reinforcement chits from the cup. Instead, what we have is a special segment before the actual action gets underway, I guess. Yeah, before any of the chits are played or even selected. Well, I guess the Germans should select what they want, but I think it doesn't necessarily matter here. I think what it is just technically the Germans should pick what their initiative should be. I don't think it's going to matter very much for what the Commonwealth does or the Allies, British do with their reinforcements, but I think, depending on how the reinforcements go, that the Axis would probably want to use a move marker to get units where they need to be. And that will have a couple of other side effects that we'll look at doing. I've realized that I've underused garrisons and fortified boxes. I've been able to re-establish fortified boxes both by the Allies and the Axis. The Axis may have been able to get more value out of them, but I think the Allies have just been on the move so much there's been no point, but they probably should have been dropping garrisons, so I may need to, on their turn, figure out a way to reconfigure and create a better line than what we currently have, which is very, I would say, very dangerous right now with as many Germans that are coming on the board. So the way this turn 3 reinforcement segment works is that the Allies will have theirs first, and then the Germans will get it. And so as we get a lot of new stuff on the board, for the Commonwealth, it's mostly a bunch of unit withdrawals and replacements. And then we'll also have, for the Axis, some new assets that will be put into the available assets box, and then a bunch of new units that will have to be placed, at this point, probably in either Benghazi or El Agheila, and they'll have to move out from there, though they may cut through the desert to get to the center map at this point. So I'm going to work through, I'm going to get everything replaced and added and withdrawn and all that other good stuff. We'll be back in just a minute. Okay, quick word on Allied reinforcements. So we did have some exchanges occur. Again, this was a case where it benefited the Commonwealth as they had one reduced unit here and has been replaced by a full-strength unit. Some of the South African units have been replaced by units that are basically the same, except they have one better defense value, which may come in handy here as we defend against the Axis. But we also had some withdrawals, and we actually lost a few units. Fortunately, it didn't leave any holes, so I sort of accidentally planned placement okay. But we did lose some units on the board, so we really don't have that many on the board, all things considered. We do have one troubling thing was that there were exchanges meant for 2 units of the tanks that were eliminated by the Italians previously. And so when we still get the new units, but they don't get to go where the other tanks were because they were destroyed. So I had to put them here in this available reinforcement point. So these tanks, though useful, are kind of behind, and they're going to have to hustle to get to the front before the Axis does. With the Axis taking a move as their first initiative, that's going to be tough to catch up. So there we go. I'll be back to show the Axis reinforcement in just a second. Okay, so in looking at the Axis reinforcements, what I try to do is put the units that have the lower movement speed in Benghazi. And we do have a limit. We have to respect the stacking limits, and Benghazi is just 1 hex. So I have the 21st Italian HQ here along with 3 divisions with speed of 4, and I believe that matches, yeah, no more than 3 divisions, and then a battalion-sized unit. So those units are there. That way they are at least, they're limited by their movement, but they can at least run along the road and try to get to Tobruk. All the other units are, for the most part, higher speed. I try to put the units that have, still the unit that had the least movement here at the front of the pack for the road, and then all the other units either have a movement of 6, 8, or 10, and so all of them are sort of clustered in the Al Agheila setup zone, which is outlined in that sort of blue dot hex side format. So all those units just sort of are bundled up there, so it's a little congested, but we'll be moving them out of there now. The west map is still the larger scale, so getting them out is going to be kind of a challenge. We have a couple of options. You know, we can take the road. We can also look at leveraging the desert road you can see here and try to come out over here down south and threaten the supply lines there. Some of the challenge being that just the reality is we're only going to get so far with regular moves, and we have to contemplate, do we start doing extended moves? And the problem with extended moves, of course, is that they do put negatives if you end up being, if you end up being disrupted, and it's a decent chance of becoming disrupted. It's at least a 33% chance base each time that you roll, and honestly, it's going to be, it's already kind of congested. That's our problem. So we may end up just doing regular moves and just hope that the number of chits that the Axis has will allow them to get on the board, bust up some of the allies, save Tobruk, and then we'll look to push further east in future turns. So that I think that's going to have to be the way that we do it, but we'll see. So we will start with, like I said, I think I'm set on it. We're going to start with an Axis move chit. They're going to use one of their normal move or combat chits for a full movement, and I'll just come back when that movement is complete. Okay, so I did the move, and I decided that I would do an extended move just so that we can get them up there. And of course what happens is, the stack that was in Benghazi, I moved to be towards Ghazala, and I put them there. You can kind of see right there to kind of protect, because you could technically get a high movement allied unit up there into the road. They ended up there with disruption on the whole stack. I moved some of the units that were down by Alagala up here, and all but one have become disrupted. And then over here, the one Italian unit became disrupted. And then, amusingly enough, the two German stacks here and over here all managed to be not disrupted. So I don't know what that tells you other than the Italians suck. Of course, the Italians also had a modifier. So those Italian units in the upper right have a +1. That's a +1 of the disruption die roll, which means it's more likely they'll become disrupted. So I guess I'm not too surprised. But what's good is that now the units, I think the desert road is well protected, and then we should be able to get on the next German Axis activation for movement. We ought to be able to at least get the Germans into play, and I think Tobruk is pretty much safe. Again, the Allies only have the -1 combat chits available, so I don't think they're going to be able to take Tobruk. They might try, but I don't think they're going to get it, so we'll see. I was able to put a fortified box in that hex for the units that have been sitting there because there was a 2-step Italian unit present, and they didn't move, so I did place a box. I think the one thing that's kind of a bummer is that over in Tobruk, I couldn't add any more fortified boxes because the 2-step units that are over there, these are 1-step, and this 2-step is a non-infantry. It's a tank, and you can't actually place a fortified box as a tank unit, I guess. So I couldn't entrench any more over there, and this will have to do. So that was the first chit, all movement, all to get the guys up front to the battle. Those disrupted units aren't going to be able to do any more extended moves. Their Zocs don't matter for retreats. We're going to have bad modifiers on combat. And they're going to stay that way for the rest of the turn, I guess. And I assume that the die roll modifiers for disruption are applicable if any unit is attacking. I might have to double check some of that, but I assume it's not a shift per unit. But I'll just avoid attacking with the Italians, I guess. So, okay. Well, let's get the first random chit draw. And it could be anything. Obviously, the Commonwealth, the Allies are disadvantaged here. The first chit is, it is logistics. Okay, well, everybody's got supply just fine. So that's one logistics chit down. I think the Axis doesn't want the next chit to be logistics for sure, because they'd certainly like to probably put some units out of supply. It would be very hard to at this point, but they'd like to, I'm sure. So we will get the next chit, and it is a Commonwealth move marker. So Commonwealth move. We'll have to think about what we want to do here with that. I think it's going to make sense as the British to kind of pull back. And as they do that, it may behoove us to look at dropping some garrisons. Non-out-of-supply two-step infantry may form a garrison unit at any time during movement in a named location or fort hex. Simply announce you are forming a garrison and place it in the space. There's no movement cost for placing a garrison, so we can just do it as we move even. So I may need to pull back, and as I pull back, place some garrisons and try to form some sort of line. You know, the tricky bit is that the Germans are going to be able to come on to the center map and just fly out and possibly encircle some folks. So we'll have to see how it goes. Yeah, we'll have to see. Okay, well, I'll be back with the moves. Okay, so as the Allies look to perform their move, a couple of things stick out as pretty important. So now that the Africa Corps is present, we have to start paying attention to I have it here, my player aid chart that's on BGG, Panzer Doctrine. They get to do an extra move, which in the last activation didn't really matter for them. But they get so many Panzer superiority bonuses, so bonuses to the die roll, but basically a good chance to have even better odds on the odds chart, and survivability, that just the fact that these units are on the board puts the Allies in a lot of danger. And so I think what we need to do is try to get the units into some sort of line. Unfortunately, I don't think there's going to be much we can do about the overall situation, but I think the Allies need to pull back, probably even pull back to some of these ridge lines and wadis, so that we can negate some of the bonuses that those panzers are going to get. So we're going to try to form a new line, I think. I don't think there's any chance of us capturing Tobruk at this point. I don't see us having the force composition necessary to get into Tobruk. We just don't have the numbers, I don't think, to make it. I mean, we could try to move and take out maybe that unit, but it would take too many activations to get into Tobruk itself. So I think we need to pull back. We'll see how that goes in a minute. Okay, so for the movements, what I ended up doing is I did move some units up towards Tobruk, hoping that if we can get at least an attack off, we might be able to put Tobruk itself under threat and cut it off from supply. We still might be able to take it if we're lucky with a chit draw, but then otherwise, I've tried to set up a screen along the desert trail sort of junction points so that I'm projecting zones of control, so it won't be easy for the Germans just to come all the way through. And I've sort of spread out the units in particular zones. I then extended moved some of our tanks, but unfortunately one of them became disrupted. But they are there, sort of in a good position that they can spread out from different areas if they have to cover the way. So I think right now what we're just trying to do is create a line and series of fallback points, kind of like what the Italians were doing, only doing this so that when the Germans come we can hold on, and then when we get our reinforcements next turn, we should be able to solidify and at least keep Bardia and the whole center map under control. But that Panzer Doctrine's going to hurt, I think, coming up. I probably should have been even more conservative and just pulled everyone back into a single line. But what I want to do is delay the Germans a little bit, and I'm hoping some of this will hold and at least slow them down with all their activation. So We'll see how well that goes. We'll pull the next chit. And it is the logistics chit. Okay, well, no one's going to be having any supply problems this turn, that's for sure. Kind of interesting. So we can kind of go hog wild, and the point will be to remove units via attacking more than cutting out of supply. And the next one is, there we go, allied attack marker is up. I think they're going to use it for a combat -1 chit. So I'll be back here after we take a look at things. Okay, so we're going to do the allied crappy combat with the -1 modifier, but here's our plan. So the goal is to crack this Italian unit here so that we can then advance after combat into the fortress hex and then attack into Tobruk, which right now only has the Italian garrison. And apparently Italian units don't get the fortress bonus for Tobruk. So I sort of maybe didn't plan this the best way, and I couldn't get a fortified box. So the only thing that this Italian unit has is 3 defense factors plus 1 for the rough terrain. So it's got 4. We will have 3 and 3, 3 and 3, so 12 combat factors attacking 4. That's 3-to-1 odds. And what we're going to do is we're just going to, I might have to modify this if it turns out this isn't the case. If you were to zoom in, I'm going to zoom in all the way. Okay, so you see that little bit of blue just right here? Do you see that? I assume that means that this hex is on the coast. It's only a sliver, and I could definitely see, I might even have to ask this on Board Game Geek, if this particular hex is a coastal hex, but in a vacuum, I'm going to say that it is, for better or for worse, because, I mean, what you would think you could get, like, boats into this inlet and fire this way, right? Like, you think you could do that. So that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to try. So the allies are going to throw in their boats. They're also going to throw in their +2 Air Force. So that's going to be another 4 factors. So that's going to bring us to 4-to-1 odds. That's the best we can get. And even though we're going to have a -1 of the die roll, we can still get... all we need to do is do 1 step loss to this unit. It's a 1-step unit. So basically anything we roll is going to be successful. And actually, come to think of it, you know what? No, we're not going to send the planes or the boats. We're going to let those things... I'm looking at the combat results chart. We just need to do 1 step loss. And pretty much anything on the 3-to-1 will allow us to do that. And we just need to do that and then advance into the hex. So it doesn't really matter what we roll, other than... I mean, I guess if we rolled something really bad, but I think we'll be okay. So so we rolled a 2 on a 3-to-1. So that's both attacker and defender lose 1 step. Well, we lose the Italian step, and I've got a fat stack of Italian counters now defeated. And we can advance after combat after we lose a step. So if I look, based on the withdrawals that will eventually happen, but not for a while, it'll make sense to take it from the South African unit, so it'll take a step loss. I think that's the best move here. And then obviously we'll advance after combat. We'll leave this unit here to guard the Zoc flank. So we did that, and the reason why we want to do that is if I manage to draw the next allied attack chit, they can attack into that garrison and then take Tobruk, and that will allow the allies to get the Tobruk captured chit added, and that might just provide enough goodness here to keep the whole situation from going tails up when the Germans get here. So that was a decent play. We're getting into Tobruk. Let's see what the next chit is, and it is a, oh my goodness, it is the Allied, you can't see it because I'm zoomed in too much, but it is the combat -1 chit that we wanted, so we will go ahead and do that. That means the next chit has to be a German chit, but we're going to go ahead and take care of that. So we just need to do 1 step loss. It appears to be clear terrain. I don't think there's anything else on here. Yeah. So we have 6, 7. That's 3-to-1 odds. No matter what we roll, whether it's 3-to-1 or 4-to-1. Well, yeah, this is kind of interesting. I'm not sure it matters which, if I should spend any assets here, because I think it's just going to be the same. If we get BL1, it's both sides lose a step, but if we get an EX result, what we probably don't is all attacking and defending units reduced by 1 step, because if we get that, that's going to hurt all of these British units. So weirdly enough, I think 3-to-1 odds is actually better. This is it's kind of a weird on the combat chart. Oh man. Oh no, I just realized that I've been using the assault table for a lot of the combats that I've been conducting in the past video and this video. Oh man. Oh man. Okay. I think at least some of the combats, not all of the combats, but some of the combats have probably been on the assault table and they shouldn't have been. So I don't know what to do about that other than just to say, whoops. It fortunately didn't matter for the last combat. Oh man, okay. All right. Well, then we're good to go. We're just gonna roll the die and we're gonna attack there. We're gonna use the 3-to-1 odds, and it doesn't really matter, I guess, what we get. Because if we get a retreat result, then that unit's going to be eliminated anyway. So we'll just do 3-to-1 odds. It's fine. 7-to-2, -1 of the die roll. We've got a 5, so we eliminate the unit, and I guess that goes back to the available, and oops, we've taken to Brook. Man, in just retrospect, I'm hoping, gosh, all those past combats, there were probably a fair number of just retreat results that may have been ignored. Let me just say, okay, when it comes to, I'm going to zoom out so I can focus on this because this is kind of the killer. If I've got one big criticism, the chart that you use 95% of the time is under the one that you used the rarest, and every time I look at the sheet, I'm looking up here instead of down here. Man, I can only imagine. It's good that we caught it in the early turns, but gosh, that's rough. I'm gonna have to do something to make sure that I don't. I'm gonna have to set up my player 8 chart with like the top half hidden or something so that I don't continue to screw that up. Yeah, something like that is going to have to happen. Dang. Okay. Well, it's fine because we've been playing it both ways the whole time, except for now where maybe it mattered more. But we would have gotten the same result, a BL1 in the first combat, and we got the retreat attack needed, and so, oh man, what probably the net effect of that is that the Commonwealth probably should not have lost the tanks that they lost earlier. Not that it matters too much because those units are now in the front here, but man, what a bummer. What a bummer that I screwed some of that up. I don't think it was too badly, and if I were to look back at the videos, I'm sure that I chose the right chart a couple of times because I remember thinking, make sure to use the mobile chart, but I think the last couple of times I wasn't doing it right. All right, I'm going to stop beating myself up. That was the attack. They got the Tobruk Falls chit, and so if I look at that on here, when the British captured Tobruk, immediately add their Tobruk Falls chit to the cup, and that's basically going to allow any two divisional formations to move and attack. There might be some errata on that, actually. Let's see. We only get one event chit per turn. Change the last sentence of Tobruk Falls German to read. Treat these as M/C chits. Okay, some of the errata is unclear. That it might seem like the Tobruk Falls chit is not as good for the Germans as they are the British, but I think I've got it. Okay, so we're gonna get that. I gotta find it. Oh man, I really hope I didn't screw up the game too badly by having a couple of those battles use the wrong CRT. I mean, it is possible. It is possible. Where is this stupid thing? Here it is. All right, so it's going. This is the chit. Just so you can see it. Tobruk Falls. Tobruk has fallen. We're going to put it in the cup. That's going to be good. I mean, we're taking it much later than we probably would have wanted to take it, but this is the way the cookie crumbles, I guess. We did get it, and so now the Germans have to take it back, and they may try to build that Tobruk bypass road now, but we'll see. Okay, next chit drawn is it's the Rommel chit, which we should have kept out to play as a priority chit, and in fact, it might have been good to do that before they attacked Tobruk, but too late, I guess. And we'll just have to wait. We'll draw another chit. Well, I think I screwed up this turn a little bit. Oh well. Alright, we draw the next one, and it is a Commonwealth British Allied chit, so we'll keep drawing. We got Tobruk Falls. Let me see if it matters if this one ignores the consecutive. Okay, so we got to put it back. And okay, so we did get a crappy move or combat. Crappy move or combat. If we move, it's our last regular move, which isn't good. I'll zoom out a second. I'll think on it here, and we'll come back. Okay, so I feel like I'm just totally flustered now. Because I don't know what I need to be doing. That's because I'm worried I've screwed up the game a little bit. But, okay, so what I did is I took the half move, and I moved some more units onto the center map. So I've got all of the Axis units on the center map. I've moved up our disrupted Italians to Tobruk to contest it. Now, if they were to attack, again, I'm pretty certain that the disruption is not per unit, because that it would just be strange to me if that was the case. It's just a lot. I think it's if you have a disrupted unit involved, you have the -2. But I've decided to separate the disrupted units a little bit, just so that if it is per unit, it's not a terribly long thing. Too many modifiers, I guess. The point will be for the Italians to try to knock out the British from the city. Down over here in the west, the Germans have come on the board. They're going to get ready to kind of smash through the desert, I think. Would be really nice if we could once we lose the disruption, then we ought to be able to make some ground here. And I just need to make sure I remember to be using the mobile CRT, I guess. So that's what we got. I'm trying to think if, would now be a good time for that Rommel chit, and I just don't know. We'll just go with the draw for now. The Allies aren't going to be able to attack anymore. At best, they're going to be able to move, and that's about it. And of course, we get the Allied move marker as the next marker. I don't think they have much they can really do. I think the only thing I would probably consider is strengthening what we already have. So probably want to get that set up. I'm not sure any other movements to make here. I mean, we got to just try to figure out where best to hold on. Okay, well, that's all we'll do here for movement. We just don't have a lot of options. Now, we get the German move or combat. And we're all out of moves, so we're going to have to use this as a combat. So we'll go ahead and do that. Now, the Allies still have all their resources, so we'll have to see how this goes. We'd like to attack Tobruk, but all we have is 7, 10 against 7. And then the Allies could toss in their support. I could attack here. That would be 10, 18 against 5, 6. Yeah, but that disruption is going to be a problem. Well, we're just going to toss that combat modifier, or that combat chit, unfortunately. But I think now is the time where we're going to go ahead and play the Rommel chit now. Just get it out of the way and use it. So Rommel will interrupt. The Rommel chit allows us to allows one non-out-of-supply German divisional formation stacked together or not, or any German units in any one hex to move and attack, or attack and move. On game turns where the Axis have the initiative based on the turn record track, which is true, this chit allows 2 German divisional formations, stacked together or not, or any German units stacked in any 2 hexes to move and attack, or attack and move. And because the the Panzer Doctrine is in play, this is actually going to be pretty valuable for us. So let's see, what I probably would like to do is get get these two units down here, and then over here I'm not sure if it matters if they're all stacked together or not. I don't think it really helps, but we'll do it that way to help the situation. So we'll set it up that way. Two different stacks. Probably want to, well, probably we'll have the Italian Air Force help here, just so that we have a nice, well, actually, okay. We're going to change this up a little bit. We're going to do that, and we're going to have this unit help here. So that will be 6, 7 to 2. And in terms of the attacks, I mean, we'll just do it here. And whether or not, let's figure out the odds, and then we can figure out how we would want to do this. So with the Panzer Doctrine, there's a couple of things to calculate. Are there any anti-tank factors here? Well, it's clear terrain, no fortified box, not a fort hex, no tank steps. So we get a +1 DRM for every Panzer step. Well, we've got multiple, so we get the +2 automatically. It's an Allied defending hex, consists of only infantry with no AT. The Panzer attack factors are doubled, and they will lose an additional step. So 32 to 3 is 6 + 1 and over. If we added both Allied Air Forces, that would be 6. That would still be, geez Louise, okay, 32 to 5. It's still 6 to 1 odds. There's no point in adding any support there. So we're simply going to roll on the 6 to 1 and above with a +2 to the die roll. Well, we got a 2, +2 is 4, is an EX. So that's actually not bad for the British. I think that's what you want. EX Defender is eliminated. So this is an irreplaceable unit, unfortunately. So 2 steps, and the attacker loses an equal number of steps. Well, this is actually pretty bad, because now the tanks are reduced each by a step. That's actually really bad. This is actually really bad. I should have probably put maybe those machine gunners in the stack as well to absorb losses, but I have no choice, so this was kind of dumb on my part. Now the stupid Steve has made his appearance. Over here, it would have been the 7 versus 2, and if we put our 2, let's see, we can make it 1 to 1 odds, but there might be other combats that will occur. Oh man, this has just been a real goofy turn for us. I almost want to start it over, but we're in it now. Okay, so we will throw in the RAF +2. So it'll be 7-4, and that's actually reduced down to 1-to-1 odds, and we'll roll the die here. We got a 3 on 1-to-1 is a BL1, so we're going to lose a step. We'll lose it from an MG here, because the armored car is not a Panzer. At least I'm pretty sure that's how you can work that. Yeah, okay. Okay, so that was used. The whole point of using the assets there was so that it would deal more losses to the Axis, and they do take the hex. And that was all for the attacks. Still got a few more chits left. We'll just go through it. We get a half move or attack for the Axis. Now they've already had a combat and they've already had 2 regular moves. So actually, we've got to put this back and draw because we just had combat and Rommel. Oh wait, no, we don't have to take it back. Never mind. Gosh, Rommel doesn't matter. Okay, so we get our combat -1. This means that all the German normal moves and combats will be complete. So combat -1. Well, I think what we'll do, we won't have any combats right now because I'm worried about that disruption for the moment. But we will make use of the Panzer action, and we'll move. We'll move these guys back up to here, just so that they're all together. And they have Zocs that connect, so there's at least that goodness. And no other combats will occur. We will draw. There's only a couple things left to draw. And we got the Tobruk Falls chit. And then this means the last 2 chits will be allies. So the Tobruk Falls, we're going to get to move allows any 2 non-out-of-supply divisional formations to move and attack. Well, the problem is we don't have a huge number of those. I don't even know what would be a good move to make here at all, actually. So I think we just ditch the chit. I mean, I don't think there's anything more we can do. We might want to attack up here, but that's a pretty big stack of Italians, and I don't think we could get enough force in there without sacrificing our line otherwise. So I feel a bit paralyzed as the ally, so I'm just going to let it go and ditch the chit, unfortunately. It's wasted. But I just don't know. I don't see where else I could make a move. I mean, the only other thing maybe... Well, we could actually... Let's see, that's 8. So we'd have 8... Not enough to get another shift. And they're in rough terrain, so that would help them. Yeah, we just don't have a lot of ways to make a difference right now, unfortunately. Which is a damn shame for the Allies. Alright, so the last 2. I'm just going to try to get through this. I know this video is probably running long at this point, but I do want to get through this last bit of the turns. So, drawing the next chit. It is the 21st Corps, Italian Corps activation. Allows any 2 Italian formations in range of the 21st Corps HQ to move and attack. Allows all other Italian units to move 1 hex if permitted. So we'll put that on our chit listing. And where did I end up putting that HQ? Put it here. In range. Any two formations in range. Well, range is 2, so I need to understand what they mean by formations, I guess. Look, what do they mean? What is a formation? I have to check the rule book just to make sure. I assume I can just use the units that are here in a stack. They don't appear to define formation. There's a divisional formation. I don't even think the Italians really have divisional formations, so I have to assume it just means I can activate 2 stacks, right? That makes sense to me. You would think so. Yeah, you know, it doesn't say about formations. Let me double check the errata. It's very goofy here. Nothing there. Yeah, you know, when you try to understand like what is a formation, and it isn't clearly defined. There's divisional formation, but that's different, and the Italians don't seem to have that. Yeah, I'm going to end up posting some questions to Board Game Geek. Because it just is not clear, which is a real damn shame, honestly, because this is kind of an important thing. Is it units, or is it, you know, I don't know. If we said that it was if we said it was 2 division-sized units, that might make some sense. But that disruption is screwing everything up. So I'm just going to pass that shit as well, honestly. And we'll finally just take the Africa core. Africa core chit. It seems so stupid that I'm skipping actions and just tossing it, but the disruption screwing up stuff, and I really screwed up those panzers. So if these panzers do get to move and attack, some of our problem is that now the Allies have tanks over here, and we're going to have anti-tank factors. It's just going to nullify the advantages that we had, which is just a real bummer. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've royally screwed up this, but the Allies also put their good tanks down in the south where this would happen, so it's like I don't know what else we can do until the Italians can make headway into Brook. We just can't get anywhere, unfortunately. And the Italians just, man, this is just a bummer. I'm not sure what else to do here, so I'm going to ditch the chit as well. If we attacked with our panzers, we've only got 8 combat factors, and against 2, 6, 10. You're not going to get anywhere here. And if we come down this way, we just open ourselves up to getting encircled. So I don't know. It's like I've created a stalemate for myself. So I'll call that the end of the actions for this turn, and we'll just have to see how the rest of this pans out shortly in the next turn. Okay? That's what we'll do. Oh, man. Okay, well, we have the attrition segment. No attrition to be found. Victory check. I don't think we have any victory points to give. Building segment, well, we'll roll the die for that. Roll the 4, so we get 2 on the east map. Boom, boom. And we'll start getting the railhead onto the center map next turn. And then disruption removal, so thank freaking goodness that goes away. I had several of these disruption markers out there. They're gone, so that's good. Asset availability, so we'll flip all of our assets back. And turn advanced. So we're going to go into the 4th turn now. It will be British Allied initiative, so they at least get that, and we'll have to see how it goes. We could actually see the Axis panzers just beat up here. So I don't know. But alright, I think that's it for this turn. We'll look at turns 4 and beyond in the next video. Sorry this turn 3 turned out so weird, guys. I think I just did not plan properly, and I think that's a big part of it. I'm playing kind of loose here. I didn't want to take too long recording this because I've got limited free time, but that's just how it's rolling out here. Which could be really bad news for the Axis, but it was also worse news for the Allies earlier on, so we'll see how it goes. Alright, thanks for watching, guys. See ya.